Classical music mysteries. We often picture classical music's greatest geniuses elegantly writing down melodies that just fell from the sky. But what if they had something more? Historical records suggest some of these composers possessed brain mechanisms that functioned like highly advanced modern information processing systems. A child who could recall and perform hours of music without looking at a single score. A man who could write down sounds that standard Western musical notation couldn't even capture. Is such a thing really possible? Of course, these are stories from long ago. We can't deny that some details might have been exaggerated over time. Still, the surviving accounts are truly astonishing. Today, we're going to explore these incredible stories about the brains of musical geniuses. First, let's look at the story of a boy genius. It's a tale that will make you question the true limits of human memory. Number 5. The 10-year-old human storage drive, Saint-Saëns. How was this possible for a 10-year-old? Paris, May 6, 1846. Our star is Camille Saint-Saëns, who was just 10 years old at the time. On this day, he made his concert debut at the Salle Pleyel. The program included Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 15 and Beethoven's Piano Concerto No. 3. Even back then, these pieces were known to require immense technical skill. Performing these works at age 10 is shocking enough, but it gets better. The National Library of France still holds his earliest handwritten manuscript, composed when he was just 3 years old. Clearly, he showed incredible musical talent from a very young age. However, what went into history is what happened after the main performance. According to concert reviews in the Parisian music journal La France Musicale, he made an incredible offer to the audience during the encore. He told them, "Please pick any of Beethoven's piano sonatas. I will play whichever one you choose from memory." Beethoven's piano sonatas span hundreds of pages of sheet music. Played back to back, the entire collection takes over 11 hours to perform. Of course, no one strictly verified his accuracy for every single piece that day, but records confirm he made the declaration and he was ready to instantly play whatever was requested. If true, his memory far exceeded the standard performance practices of his era. From a modern perspective, he stored massive amounts of data and retrieved it on command. It was as if he had a highly advanced memory system wired directly into his brain. If Saint-Saëns was a genius of memory, our next subject is a genius of analysis. He could decode incredibly complex sound waves. Number 4. Analyzing unknown audio, Bartók. A composer whose analysis skills rivaled his composing? Our next star is the early 20th century composer, Béla Bartók. From 1904 into the 1930s, he traveled to various rural villages to collect folk songs sung by the locals. The rural songs of that time didn't fit into standard Western music scales. They contained microtonal fluctuations and entirely unique pitch systems. Furthermore, some were sung in complex additive rhythms, like 13/8 time. For most people trained in Western music, analyzing these songs was incredibly difficult. Throughout his life, Bartók worked with folk music from Hungary and Romania, reaching as far as North Africa and Turkey. It's estimated that he personally collected over 10,000 songs. When we look at his surviving handwritten field notes today, one characteristic stands out clearly. He could hear pitches that standard notation couldn't capture, and he transcribed them using custom auxiliary symbols he invented himself. As for his earliest research, he started using a phonograph quite early on. As time went by, his methods became increasingly precise. He would slow down the playback speed of his recorded wax cylinders. Then he used his own symbols to document not just slight pitch differences, but vocal nuances, breathing timing, and the tiniest rhythmic fluctuations. These records show that he captured and transcribed sound with incredible precision. He took audio that defied existing frameworks and translated it into a brand new symbolic system. It was like decoding an unknown language. However, it's worth noting that he wasn't always perfect on his first try. He actually revised some of his earliest transcriptions years later using better recording equipment. From a modern viewpoint, his work was essentially high-level speech recognition done entirely by hand. He was accurately encoding non-standard audio into perfectly readable data. After the ears comes the eyes. Next, let's look at an unbelievable ability in sight reading, instantly converting complex sheet music into flawless performance. Number 3. Instantly converting visual data into sound. Liszt. Is there really someone who can instantly turn massive amounts of visual data into live music? In the late 1860s, Edvard Grieg witnessed exactly that. The man with this astonishing ability was none other than Franz Liszt, the reigning king of the piano world at the time. Grieg visited Liszt bringing along the full orchestral score for his newly finished piano concerto. A full score contains every single instrument's part. Playing that straight from the page onto a piano is no easy feat. This is because orchestral scores include transposing instruments. The notes written on the page are different from the pitches that actually sound. To play it, you need an advanced technique called reduction. You have to mentally transpose on the fly, pick out the most important melodies from dozens of parts, and somehow fit it all under 10 fingers. According to a letter Grieg wrote to his parents, Liszt took the score and began playing it almost instantly. But he didn't just play it, he flawlessly reproduced the distinct orchestral parts. He even offered specific advice on the instrumentation as he played, right there on the spot. Furthermore, letters from Felix Mendelssohn also record an incredible event. He wrote that Liszt perfectly sight-read an entire concerto from a very messy, hard-to-read handwritten manuscript. While these accounts might include some subjective awe, the sheer volume of testimony from his contemporaries makes one thing certain: Liszt possessed an extraordinary, undeniable talent for sight reading. This ability to instantly turn visual information into sound was a huge part of his legendary reputation. In modern terms, he had the processing speed of a high-end computer. He could parse complex blueprints in real time and render them flawlessly. Liszt's processing speed was overwhelming, but our next genius takes things in a different direction. He was the god of improvisation, able to construct complex structures on the spot from near impossible prompts. Number 2. Real-time computation for a king's challenge. Johann Sebastian Bach. Is it possible to instantly process an unreasonable demand? The year is 1747, the month of May. Enter Johann Sebastian Bach and King Frederick II of Prussia. On this day, the king invited Bach to his court. The king presented a melody allegedly of his own creation. He then demanded, "I want you to improvise a 3-part fugue using this theme." Modern research shows that this melody, now known as the royal theme, was based in C minor and heavily featured chromatic progressions. It was a fiercely difficult subject that demanded highly advanced counterpuntal treatment. Because of this, many believe the king intentionally designed it to test the absolute limits of Bach's abilities. According to contemporary newspaper reports and testimony from his son, Carl Philipp Emanuel, Bach rose to the challenge. He constructed and performed a 3-part fugal improvisation on the spot using that exact complex theme. The king then pushed further, demanding a 6-part fugue. Bach realized that maintaining a high level of perfection while improvising in 6 parts on the king's theme would be nearly impossible. So instead, he performed a 6-part fugue using a theme of his own choosing. But he promised the king that he would develop the royal theme into a proper composition and dedicate it to him at a later date. Roughly 2 months later, on July 7, 1747, a collection called The Musical Offering was published and dedicated to the king. This masterpiece includes works utilizing extreme counterpuntal techniques, such as a crab canon, where the theme is played entirely backwards. A fugue is a strictly structured form of music, often described as highly logical or even mathematical. The ability to construct such a framework perfectly illustrates Bach's advanced counterpuntal mind. In modern terms, it was a display of high-level theoretical thinking. He derived a perfectly consistent structure from a set of incredibly complex variables. Today, this story is still told as the ultimate symbol of Bach's musical mastery. And finally, our #1 spot goes to a universally known prodigy. He combined the logical thinking of Bach with the massive storage capacity of Saint-Saëns. Number 1. The boy who memorized heavily guarded data, Mozart. Is it possible for a human to recreate a closely guarded musical score after hearing it just a few times? It is April of 1770. Enter Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who was only 14 years old. The Sistine Chapel in Rome held a sacred choral piece called the Miserere, composed by Gregorio Allegri. The work features a 5-part choir and a 4-part choir singing in alternation, culminating in all 9 parts weaving together. The papacy fiercely protected this piece, strictly forbidding anyone from copying it or taking the sheet music outside the chapel. According to letters from his father, Leopold, Mozart listened to it just once. Then he returned to his inn and transcribed the entire score from memory. He later listened to it a second time and filled in even finer musical details. It's an incredible story. A 14-year-old boy relied solely on his ears to recreate a highly complex composition with multiple overlapping voices. Interestingly enough, a few months later, in July 1770, Pope Clement XIV awarded Mozart the Order of the Golden Spur. Because the timing is so close, many point to this as proof that the Pope was impressed by the Miserere incident. However, the exact reason for the award remains officially unconfirmed. Regarding the accuracy of his reproduction, some experts point out that he might have made later revisions. Others suggest he could predict the structure based on standard musical conventions of the time. This theory argues that his deep understanding of contemporary musical styles is what actually made the memory feat possible. Even taking those points into account, this event remains one of the most famous stories in music history. It perfectly captures the legendary genius of Mozart. Epilogue: Advanced Information Processing Systems. We've just explored 5 superhuman stories of musical geniuses. While their abilities might seem like magic or superpowers, they were human beings, just like us. It's true that historical anecdotes can sometimes grow a bit exaggerated. Later generations naturally want their heroes to be completely extraordinary. Even so, one fact remains undeniable. These individuals dedicated their entire lives to music. Through overwhelming passion and rigorous training, they pushed their brains to the absolute limit, storing massive amounts of information, instantly analyzing it, and assembling it all into beautiful music. These powers might not just be God-given talents. Instead, they could represent the true hidden potential of the human brain, blossoming spectacularly in the realm of music. Who knows? Maybe we all have some incredible, unawakened power sleeping inside of us right now. When you think about it that way, doesn't it feel just a little bit exciting? Thank you for watching. If you have your own thoughts, theories, or interpretations, feel free to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more content like this. See you in the next video.